everybody. I am going to record a video today about the Enneagram Type 3. And I'm an Enneagram 3. My name is Kier McAlpin, and I am a social / self-preservation 3 with a 2 wing, with 8 wing 7 and 5 wing 6 fixes. And I'm going to talk to y'all today for the GOD about Type 3. So let's go ahead and do this. It's pretty important to understand a couple of things just sort of conceptually about Type 3. So Type 3 has often been called the achiever, the performer, even the competitive achiever. Type 3, it's in the heart center. It's a heart type. Type 3 is a primary type, meaning that it is in sort of the core of the center of intelligence that it's in. So in the same way that 6 is in the center of the head center and 9 is in the center of the gut center, 3 is in the center of the heart center. It's juxtaposed with 2 and with 4. Being in the heart center, Type 3 is an image type, and the sort of emotional experience that's associated with Type 3 is shame. Now, I know a lot of y'all who are watching this have some pre-existing familiarity with Enneagram teachings and Enneagram content. And, you've probably often seen people refer to 3 as the image type. 3 is the type that cares about image. 3 is the type that is obsessed with image and with looking good. Well, contrary to what people often discuss in these sort of casual discussions, is that every single heart type is an image type. Every single heart type is a shame type. Every single heart type is concerned with how they look, because your image center, and everybody has one, whether you're an image type or you're a gut type or a head type, everybody has a heart. Everybody has an image, whether they're aware of it or not. And heart center is what you do when you're trying to be seen and understood. So 3 is one particular fixation, one particular way or style of doing the heart center. And 3 is about, like I said, achievement, performance, competition. So we're going to get into this a lot more later, but 3 is an heart image type. So the way that I'm going to introduce this material to y'all is basically basics about the triads. So the triads are really important. There's something in the Enneagram that's called the rule of 3. So whatever trait you're looking at, whenever you're looking at somebody's personality and you're assessing them as having a particular trait, whatever trait you're looking at, there's generally going to be 3 types that embody that trait. Not 1, 3. So, for example, clear-cut example, with the Hornevian Triad, the Assertive Triad, if you see somebody that's really aggressive, a real go-getter, somebody who's comfortable, using their elbows, pushing people around to try to get what they want, you might think, gee, that's a Type 8, or, the bottom line is there's 3 different assertive types. There's 3, 7, and 8. All 3 are assertive. All 3 are very much capable of embodying that sort of aggressive go-getter personality that I just described for you. So that's one of the challenges with the Enneagram, is that you can't boil down a single type based on a single trait or even a couple of traits, because no matter what trait you're looking at, there's 3 types that are going to be strongly embodying that trait, not 1. And there is no most. And I see this all the time on Reddit, where there's the most, which type is the most caring, or which type is the most image conscious, or which type is the most concerned about oddly specific random factor. There is no most. Every single triad is going to account for traits, and each type has sort of a constellation of triads. So you have to look at what all the triads are, take note of which ones each type has, and then you can start to suss out the differences and the key distinctions. So what are these triads? There's the center of intelligence. Where is the person's center of intelligence located? Is it in the head? Is it in the heart? Or is it in the gut or in the body? Okay. And the next triad is harmonic. How do you handle conflict? How do you cope with having your needs unmet? How do you solve problems? And there are harmonic, reactive types, competency types, and positive outlook types. Then there's the Hornevian Triad, which is how do you move in relation to other people to get what you want? Do you move against other people? Do you move towards other people? Or do you back away from people? That's the assertive, moving against; compliant, moving towards, also known as super ego. And then there's withdrawn, which is retreating, moving away. Those are the Hornevian triads. Then there's finally object relations. Object relations is a term that comes from psychology, and it's how we affect or are affected by someone or something else. It's the most abstract of the triads that we're going to talk about. It's the hardest to understand if you don't have a psychology background, but it's one of the most useful. It's easily as useful, if not more, than the harmonic and Hornevian triads. You need to understand object relations to understand a type fully, but if it's confusing you, that's okay. You can usually distinguish what type you are without understanding object relations. But the three different object relations triads are attachment, rejection, and frustration. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what triads the three is a part of, and then we're going to sort of unpack the distinctions that are in each one of those. And then I'm going to conclude with some observations about type 3 in general, sort of what I think people are getting right about type 3, what I think people are missing about type 3, and we'll just have sort of an informal discussion about that. So the threes triads are heart type for center of intelligence, competency type for reactive triad, assertive type for Hornevian triad, and attachment for the object relations. Now, these all work together, so you have to understand them as a whole, but what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to break them down individually, distinguish them from each other, and then hopefully, you can use those as building blocks to work your way up to like a complete understanding of the type, hopefully. Now, just generally speaking, I think to understand 3, you have to understand that the prize of type 3 is value. Threes are said to be lacking an innate sense of their own value or their own worth. Threes don't innately feel like they are valuable or worthwhile people. Instead, threes associate value and worth as something that is bestowed upon them or that they earn from external sources, and that, which gives the threes sort of the, I think, highly accurate common description is sort of like the human doing. 3 is the human doing. 3 is sort of the natural innate understanding that people are only as valued by society as they are useful to society. People aren't valued based on who they are. People are valued based on what they can do. And whether a 3 is rebelling against that, has spiritual or political beliefs that are rejecting that, doesn't matter. If somebody's a core 3, or even if they're under the influence of 3 as a fixation in the heart center, they're going to have that sort of innate understanding that, value is sort of missing, and that what they're able to do for other people and what they're able to do for society in general and what they're able to sort of provide for other people, or, the ways in which they're able to sort of attract other people and like penetrate others' consciousness, that's what's giving them the value that they don't have. And usually threes will sort of try to attain value by setting goals. So you think of goals as sort of goal-oriented, success-oriented. Those are all associated with type 3. The 3 is the human doing, doesn't have an innate sense of value. Threes are desiring of a particular type of a value that they want to get, and that the pathway to get there is through goals. So you've got the 3, you've got the 3's goal, and then you've got the value that the 3 is going to try to get to based on that goal. So that's just sort of an overview for type 3, because value is sort of the prize of type 3, and that's not something that's particularly connected to any one of these 4 triads, but it's going to come up throughout. So heart triad, aka image triad, aka shame triad. So like 6 and 9, which are at the core of their centers of intelligence, aka the primary types, 3s suppress the thing that their center is about, which in this case is the heart. So 3s are a heart suppressing type, and sometimes they're referred to as heart blind, same as 7 and 8, meaning that there's something about 3s that's sort of out of touch with their own heart, out of touch with their own desires, out of touch with their own feelings. And the way in which 3 does the heart center is based on what the 3 is trying to embody or trying to live up to or trying to become. Because image Image is about having a sense of who you are and who you're supposed to be in life. All image types are like this. And everybody has an image center, so everybody has some sense of this in somewhere in their psyche. So image is about having a sense of who you are and who you're supposed to be in life, and then having a sense of shame around falling short of that thing, around not being that thing. So if you're trying to embody a particular thing or a particular image, you're trying to live up to a particular image that you have in your mind. If you don't do that, if you fall short of that, then you experience a sense of shame, like you have sort of disappointed yourself and that you failed to be what you were supposed to be. And humiliation can be an extremely powerful word for threes, because humiliation is sort of about shame that's being imposed on you by other people. Like, not only did you let yourself down, somebody else is humiliating you by pointing out the discrepancy between who you were supposed to be and who you were. So threes are avoiding that. And the heart center is who you are when you're trying to be seen and understood. And threes experience shame associated with not being seen and not being understood in the way that they are intending. And we're going to talk more about that when we talk about attachment. But just to delineate three in the heart center and the other two heart types, 2 and 4, three's prize is value, 4's prize is identity. So from a 3 perspective, what does it matter to have an identity that's unique to you, that's specific to you, that's coming from you, if nobody else values it, if it's not productive, if it doesn't do anything? Like, being uniquely worthless is not something that is going to resonate with the self-aware 3, even with a 3 with a 4 wing. In other words, that sort of intense concentration on the uniqueness of the image and on the specificity and self-creation, sui generis identity that 4 is, about. 3s kind of see that as being like pointless, or as just not, it's not a correct strategy to try to be valuable in whatever instinctual focus that 3s maintaining. And when it comes to 3 versus 2, the 3 value versus the 2 prize of love. So 2s sort of mortgage their hearts, they leverage their hearts, they give away their heart to other people so that the 2 will hopefully receive that in return, or receive whatever else that the 2 is trying to get. So 2s really own their emotions, and the 2 heart is on the 2's sleeve for sure. And that's just not going to be present with 3, because it's sort of a heart blind type. In the same way that 6s can know a ton, but they doubt what they know, and they look for external confirmation of what they know, and they look to be supported and be provided reliable information from other people, because they're sort of denying what they know in their head. Or 9s are sort of, they have tons of autonomy and they're plenty capable, but they sort of don't think of themselves that way, and they sort of are sort of worried about that, so they withdraw. 3s are similar in that 3s are sort of denying the heart, like denying their emotions, just in order to be able to get things done. Which brings me to the second triad, which is the harmonic triad, how to handle conflict and how to cope. So 3 is a competency type. So the competency types are 1, 3, and 5. Competency is about doing things correctly, being good at it. And the way to do that is through rationality, through objectivity, and neutrality. A neutral, third-person, reasonable perspective is what the competency types are bringing to their problem-solving efforts to get their needs met when they're not getting met. And this gives, 3, along with 1 and 5, sort of a detached quality. 3s are sort of described as being somewhat detached or distant, in that they are trying to solve their problems by getting outside of their problems, understanding them, and then tackling them with correct action. And, we can distinguish 3 as a competency type from reactive types. Like, if you're a reactive type, how are you trying to solve your problems and get your unmet needs met? You might complain about it if you're a 6. You might hit it with a hammer if you're an 8. You might hate it and just be disgusted with it like a 4. Sort of 3s take a step back and assess whether being reactive in a situation is going to be productive for them. I might be angry with you, but I might suppress my feeling of anger and withhold that from you in a detached way, because I've decided for whatever reason that for me to show you my anger, for me to really tell you like it is, tell it like it is, the way that emotionally realist reactive type might prefer, is just not going to be helpful. Like it's not going to make anything better. It's not going to make me feel better. It's not going to make the problem go away. It might make things worse. So that's the sort of competency perspective, is like the emotional reactivity. Is that really going to do any good? That's the competency perspective. And similarly, positive outlook. So 3 is interesting because 3 is a competency type, but I think people tend to think of 3, or at least 3-wing 2, as being fairly positive as a type. And clearly 2 is a positive outlook type. So the positive outlook types 2, 7, and 9. How is competency different from that? Well, positive outlook, you're really trying to reframe things in a positive way so you can keep going and keep doing your thing, maintain a positive attitude. And that's great. But like 3s aren't positive, but if you find a really negative 3, like chances are they're completely like a mess. Okay. Because it's incredibly difficult for a 3 to sustain a high level of motivation, high level of hard work, determination, grit, plow through obstacles, overcome setbacks, stifle any sense of shame or humiliation around failure, which will happen. If hard to do all that if you've got a really, really negative attitude. There's that Michael Jordan, who's a type 3, quote about how he was trusted hundreds of times to score the game-winning shot and miss, and he's missed thousands of times, and he's failed over and over and over and over again, and that's why he's a winner. Like, if you're really negative, it's hard to like keep yourself buoyant and upright. So all that being said, from a 3 perspective, competency means maintaining some degree of optimism, but it doesn't mean that you're reframing everything in sort of a positive outlook way, which can be kind of like a magical thinking. And it's certainly in the case of 7 and 9 is associated with magical thinking. So, you're not doing all of the reframing. You're still trying to be objective, but competency requires, in 3's case, some degree of, optimism, which I think would typically be missing in 1 and 5. So that's an interesting way to distinguish those. So again, competency, hard work. The way to win is to work hard. 3s can be tryhards. 3s can be embarrassing tryhards. The tryhard in your class who got an A on the test, like an A+, who said they didn't study, who you knew was lying, that person's probably a 3, or is a 3 fixed in the heart center. So 3s are usually like playing a game. 3s usually have a game that they're good at, that they are winning at, that they're focused on, that they're trying to get better at, that they could tell you all about, maybe more than one. So 3s are looking for a way to distinguish themselves and be competent at something. It doesn't have to be everything. It doesn't have to be like you have to be the best at everything. Maybe some 3s think that. I don't think that, but generally speaking, 3s are just trying to attain value through achieving goals and being excellent in some particular area where they think they've really got an edge and are able to be more competent than the average person. So, I mean, if you think about image competency, whatever goal the 3 has, whatever value that goal represents to the 3, there's an external standard or external source of value that 3 is trying to embody. It's not subjective. It's not idiosyncratically, uniquely peculiar to the individual 3. It's going to be some sort of generally recognized, generally accepted, generally understood source of value. Okay. So it's like very generic example would be like, having a 6-figure job, being married, having 2.5 kids, being a homeowner, having a white picket fence, driving a carbon neutral vehicle, things like that. Like everybody can recognize that as sort of an example of like an image of an adult who is like, who's got their shit together. And when I say image, I think it's important to clarify, like image isn't necessarily just like the way you look like in a photograph. It's not just the photographic image. I think that's sort of more of like a crude understanding of it. Image is more of like, I mean, it can be that, certainly it is that, that's part of the image that I'm describing, but the image is more of like a sort of like a comprehensive totality of everything that is objective. That's sort of like some sort of archetype, which sort of gets at the neutrality, the objectivity, and the rationality of type 3. And I mean, of course, I've got a 5-wing 6 head fix, so I'm probably way over talking competency, but I think it's important for people to understand that 3 is a competency type. 3 is approach problem solving objectively, not subjectively. So 3 is the home of like measurement, the key performance indicator, the KPIs. You know, what are the measurable criteria that will be used by other people, not by me, not by the 3, but by other people? How will other people assess whether or not something was done right, whether something was done well, whether something was done excellently? How will they look at it? You know, the Michelin stars, the awards, the Oscars, the accolades, those are all external objective reference points that are emblematic of whether or not something has been done well. So if you've won an Oscar, you probably know how to act. And that's the kind of thing that 3s can sort of become attached to, is they can become attached to sort of the external validator that's the objective criteria, the objective decider for whether or not, you know, they're winning at their game. Okay. Last thing I want to say about competency is that, like, a trope that shows up on social media that I've seen many times is that 3s don't care about being competent. 3s simply want to appear to be competent. It reminds me of that scene from The Departed where you've got the Martin Sheen character who's asking Leonardo DiCaprio, it's like, do you want to be a cop or do you want to appear to be a cop? It's an honest question. And the idea was that most people don't really want to be cops. They just want to appear to be cops. And this is part of Martin Sheen's sales pitch to the Leo character, why he should become an undercover cop, because he has to be a cop without appearing to be one. Well, and people say 3s don't care about being the real deal. 3s only care about looking like it, you know? In other words, if I could take all the Instagram photos that make me look successful and, you know, give me the money and I don't have to work for it, that's great. I mean, okay, sure. But I don't think any 3s, like that I know anyway, are really looking at life in that way. I mean, I think most 3s understand that in order to be successful and competent at something, in order to be excellent, in order to be differentiated and valued, in order to be sort of alluring and attractive to other people in like an intense, concentrated way, it's necessary to like do the work, which is what I think competency is about. In terms of distinguishing 3 from 1 and from 5, I don't think it's that hard. For one thing, I mean, 5s in reality can't be confused with image types normally. And 5s are just completely cut off from the body and from the heart. So 5s are sort of the brain on stilts, and all of their instinctual resources are going into you know, building mental leverage about a couple of specific things, and they're going to know everything about those narrow foci. And you know, 3s are trying to be well-rounded. So generally speaking, you know, me, I'm a 3 with 2 hexad fixes. So we're about to get to object relations, I promise. Actually, I still have to do assertive, but that's quick. Yeah, I mean, I have less attachment, but I still care about being well-rounded. You know, I don't just want to maximize this single criteria, this single alpha that's like the one thing. No, like 3s are usually trying to be well-rounded. 5s are not trying to be well-rounded, even if 3 with a 5 fix is going to have some degree of well-roundedness to them. In 1, it's about the body. It's about what feels right. It's about that gut sense of disgust when something is wrong, you know? And it's also sort of like that gut knowing, like, this is the right way, and it doesn't need to be explained. It just is. So I think it's pretty easy to distinguish 1 and 5 from core type 3, although you could be a 3 with 1 and 5 fixes too. All right, assertive. 3s are assertive. So this is the Hornevian Triad, how you move in relation to other people. 3 is an assertive type. 3s are goal-oriented. They're go-getters. They do what it takes. They'll break some eggs to make an omelet. 3s are cool with that. They're cool with going against other people to get their needs met. 3s are cool with competition. You know, life in a lot of ways is a zero-sum game. Somebody wins, somebody loses. If you're trying to win at tennis, and win a tennis tournament, you're going to have to beat a lot of other tennis players in that tournament in order to win. And threes embrace that, and threes are cool with that. They're not putting other people first. They're not sort of putting themselves on an even playing field with others in the same way that a superego type would do. Sixes are looking at humanity and like a level playing field, and I'm no better than anybody else. Threes are trying to be better than other people. Ones are all about, sort of doing the right thing and adhering to the standard. Threes are more like, what do I need to do to get what I'm trying to get? And then twos put other people's needs first, or at least that's the image that they're portraying. So, and it's easy to distinguish threes from a withdrawn type, because a three is typically an extroverted type. There are some introverted threes, some not very normal, it's not very common, let's say. But withdrawn types are moving away from other people, right? So the way that they sort of deal with their problems is to back away. Fours go brood about how much everything is terrible and how, horrible reality is, and try to create some sort of creation that it's expressing, the part of them that's, different from that. And, nines just kind of go to sleep and sort of numb out and withdraw. And, fives go into their head and just intellectualize everything and cut off from everything else. So threes are assertive types, like 7 and like 8, the other heartblind types. So ultimately, threes' desire is to be better, to outshine, to win, to beat people. That comes from assertiveness. Everybody has value as a human being, but, as a three, you're trying to, in some way, have more value than other people, or at least have as much value, relatively speaking, to stand out and be excellent and get the, validation that you're seeking. All right, object relations. Object relations is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to go into it just briefly here. There's a lot of good content out there about it. The Big Hormone Enneagram, John Lukovich, Enneagrammer.com, they do a really good job of going into object relations, which is a thorny and complicated topic. But 3 is an attachment type. So the attachment type is about adaptation. It's about the adjustment of the self. It's not about being hyper specific about, who you are as a person and what you want and what you're offering people or what you're doing for other people and what you like. It's some degree of malleability is present with the attachment types. And with 3, the way to understand how 3 is an attachment type is that, to me, it's helpful to understand it in context of the competency triad, or competency triad, because with competency, there's always a neutral perspective. There's always a third party observer. There's me, there's my, problem I'm trying to solve, or there's me and my audience. And then there's a third party assessing who's like the director. If I do it wrong, the director is going to say, cut. If I'm going to do a good job, then I'm going to get validation and applause and approval. And it's not just me doing me and take it or leave it. 3 is adjusting. It's sort of like I have my presentation, I have my method, I have what I'm trying to say, but I'm in some way, I'm changing how I do that in order to produce a desired effect. And 3s can become very attached to outcomes. 3s can be very attached to goals. What outcome attachment does for 3s is it's a yes to the goal. It's a yes to the value that's supposed to come from the goal. Maybe it doesn't, but it's a yes to the value that's supposed to come from the goal. And then for all of the how to get there, how to do it, question mark, and then 3s navigate sort of a sense of disconnectedness from that, the things that they have to do to get to the goal. Maybe you want to get like shredded in the gym, but you hate leg day, or maybe you want to hit a certain financial status, but you don't like your job. Whatever it may be, 3s experience disconnectedness as they try to adapt to do whatever it takes to get to what goal they've become attached to. And they're sort of adjusting themselves, which is, I think, a good segue to the supposed fakeness of 3, or the supposed obsession with looks that comes with type 3. So I think every image type is obsessed with the way that they look in some way. And it's also noticeable if you see somebody who's completely not imagey, not packaged as an image. It's like fairly easy to tell that they're not an image type, even if they think that they are, which is a particular problem for a particular type that we're not going to talk about right now. And like, do threes ultimately care about the way that they look and how they're coming across? Yes. Does that mean that that's all threes are? No. Does it mean that that's all that threes are ever trying to do? No. I think that most threes are genuinely wanting to be the person who they are trying to be, and they are putting their energy towards becoming that person. And they are ashamed of themselves when they're forced to confront the fact that they may not be that person yet. And they may experience deep shame and humiliation when they question whether or not they'll ever be that person. And that's where a lot of the sort of three internal drama is coming from, a sense of like, I want to hit a goal, and I really hope that I can, and because like there's a disconnectedness between a goal and the value that's supposed to come from it. So like the idea that you're not that you can't hit the goal and then reassess is terrifying, because ultimately the three doesn't know that hitting that milestone is going to make them happy, right? And if you've got a more mature three, they probably understand that when they hit that next milestone in a couple hours, it's going to become the new normal. And then the new question is going to be, what's the next big thing? So threes have that sort of sieve-like sense of self-worth where it's like never quite enough, because you're always going to adapt and adjust to when you hit the goal and you got there and you did it, you're going to adjust to that. And then it's going to be, how do I be better? And just so on and so on ad infinitum. And this is why a lot of people sort of think that threes are disgusting, is because threes are that sort of insatiable, eternal achiever and performer who's never, fully going to be able to be happy. And that's why threes need to work on, doing nothing all day, which is what I'm doing right now, and sort of developing activities and developing interests that are outside of the practical domain, that isn't part of some kind of hustle, like efficiency, doing more and being more productive. Let me knock down the items on my to-do list faster so I can put even more things on my to-do list, and I can get those done, so I'll be even more valuable. Like ultimately, I think peace and like, happiness and, like internal power, like a sense that you're really able to, do what you want and like get what you want in life for a three, comes from sort of like turning off that director, from, turning off that sort of evaluator and judger, like the person that's grading the homework, like just sort of do your thing and enjoy it. Not so easy to do for threes, but it is something that I think threes need to develop. At least, it's something that I've been working on. And, some others, what else can we talk about? Authenticity. So people think of threes as being fake and inauthentic. Like to a certain extent, a type three, and like the more attachment they have, like the more true this is going to be. But a type three doesn't necessarily have the most specific, localized sense of what it means to be themselves. Like threes are used to weaving and bobbing and shifting and adjusting in order to fit some predefined purpose. Like what the three is after, what the three's goal is, what the three wants, that's in a large part, that's what's real. That's not fake. That is real. What they want is real. What they're willing to do to get there is real. And, the rest is just details. And those details are a lot of what would be authentic or real to other people of other types. So I think it's interesting to think about that, because whenever I come across somebody often who's saying, threes are fake, threes just, like care way too much about what other people think, it always kind of puzzles me a little bit. And I'm going to conclude with that, caring about what other people think, because this is like a sort of a major sort of thing that actually prevented me from seeing that I was a three for a long time, because I care on some level what people think, but it's not like I'm a slave to approval, and all I care about is like a pat on the back and, being validated and stuff like that. I wouldn't ever say that if you're a core type 3, on some level, you're aware of what other people think, but it's also your strength. You're able to sort of adjust to your audience. You're able to package things communication wise in a way that'll be more effective for the person who's having to listen to you. And that's your strength. And does that mean that you have to care to some degree about what other people think? Sure, it does. But it doesn't I think 3s as an assertive type are moving against other people, and they are breaking some eggs to make omelets, and they understand on some level that there are people who are not going to like it, that they're getting ahead. So the idea that a 3 is willing to just prostrate themselves to the opinion of any random stranger and just do anything to be liked is just not going to be accurate for, I think, most type 3s, because as an assertive competency type, you've got a lot of sort of innate sense of self-confidence, an innate sense that you're here on planet Earth to do big things and to accomplish big things and do more and be more. Not everybody's going to be your friend, not everybody's going to like you, and don't. So if you're kind of considering whether or not you're a type 3, I would say don't get too thrown off by people who are always saying 3s just want to be liked, 3s only care about what other people think, 3s just want to have the image, they don't care about being whatever it is that the image is of. Don't get thrown off by that stuff. Remember, it's an image type, a heart type, it's competency type, an assertive type, and it's an attachment type. If you can put those pieces together and you can sort of just turn off all the bullshit, it's pretty easy to see what makes somebody a type 3.